You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, Halo Nation. Hello, Halo hopefuls. And oh yeah, hi there, Dodgers fans. Welcome to this special crossover edition of the Locked On Angels and Locked On Dodgers Postcast. He is a not so happy tonight, Pete Fox, the postcast host for the Dodgers. I am Gavin Carlson, the postcast host for the Angels. We're going to win the World Series in 2025 Angels after this performance tonight. 10-1, the final score at the Big A. Bobby Miller got destroyed. Griffin Canning looks headed for a Cy Young. Oh man, we got a lot to talk about in this one. Pete, I don't think I've been so excited to do a show in my life. How are you?
Yeah, feeling? We're not even going to talk about the Dodgers tonight. We're just going to talk about the Angel fans in the parking lot spraying themselves with champagne. This is the biggest win of the year for them. They have one other 10-run performance. That was against the Marlins, though. The Dodgers are at least a real team over 500. According to Jeff, this means they are now not going to win the championship, but he probably thought that all along. So Jeff is celebrating with this win, and rightfully so. My question for you guys in the chat, for you, Gavin, look, this seemed like a pretty good Angel team today. Why can't they do this all the time? You know, Hunter Strickland seems like the real deal. Okay. One of the big problems with the Angels is their pitching, and I've seen pretty decent pitching. Griffin Canning, pretty good. I don't know what's going on. Why can't the Angels show up and play against teams that aren't good?
Yeah, no, the one weird thing with the Angels this year has been we actually show up against good teams and we can't get it done in series against the Oakland A's and whatnot. So we'll talk about it. There's a couple things that really encourage me, obviously, in a game like this, but in terms of next year, because we don't care about this year. I mean, obviously, like we said, we want to avoid 100 losses. We want to avoid that worst season in MLB. Hey, it's this game meant a lot to us, all right? We already talked about it. This is the rivalry, and it means even more. I knew the Fire Dave Roberts were going to be in there. Before we jump into this party for us Angels fans and sadness for the Dodgers fans, a quick shout out to, first and foremost, everybody in here, and then the sponsor of today's show. It is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Where we start in this one, we got to start. I mean, it's pretty simple. The Angels lineup, which has been pretty abysmal the last few months, honestly, the whole year, absolutely explodes. They waste no time. A 5-run first inning that includes Anthony Rendon doing something good. First off, he's playing, miracle number one, and then two, he actually did something. So Anthony Rendon, a 2 RBI single in the first, and then Mickey Moniak, the big 3-run home run to make it a 5-run first inning and put this one this felt like blowout territory right away. And I don't normally feel like that, even when the Angels do occasionally go up 5-0. I'm like, especially seeing Griffin Canning out there against this Dodgers lineup. I'm like, I don't know if I feel safe. But then the main thing for me, they add another run in the second, and that's when I knew right there, okay, this Angels lineup, they didn't just have a big inning. They'll do that once in a while. No, this lineup tonight was locked in. They were clearly squaring everything that Bobby Miller was trying to throw at them, especially that fastball, and just a dominant performance. I mean, 11 hits to 6 hits is not that crazy, but for once, the Angels lineup actually gets it done with the runners in scoring position to some degree. I mean, not to some degree. 6 of 13 with runners in scoring position for this team is a miracle. And then Griffin Canning, who has been one of the worst starting pitchers in the entire league. The ERA is still over 5, even after tonight. He looked amazing. Pete,
what in the world? Specific, Victor said they lost to a pitcher that is 5-10. Griffin Canning is 5-12.
And that's after the win. That's after the win tonight.
The win. I don't know.
What the heck, Pete? What happened?
Part of this was Bobby Miller was throwing the ball well, but he was not being a good pitcher. Yep. He was throwing and not pitching. And a lot of times, there's a lot of reading between the lines on what went into a guy's outing. Bobby Miller had 8 Ks today, which is really, really surprising and remarkable. Okay. For a couple of reasons. He got shelled in the first inning and then got the train back on the tracks from there on to make it through 5, which is a miracle. But the other thing that was really surprising, it was like the answer to the question was staring him in the face and he didn't want to pay attention to the answer, right? Griffin Canning's fastball is his most used, not Griffin Canning, Bobby Miller's fastball is his most used pitch, right? 40+% of the time. The average against the fastball is over 300. 5 of his first 6 Ks, if not 6 of his first 7 Ks, were with changeups. The home runs came off of fastballs. So it's like Eric Karros pointed it out. Eric Karros is a first baseman, not a pitcher. Pretty simple scenario here. You set up the batters with the fastball and then, work them with your off speed, which he did. But these fastballs that were right down Main Street that were hit out in the first inning were bad pitches, right? Locate them better, find a better spot to miss, especially early in the count. Set them up with the fastball. Then you finish them with the off speed. The changeup was working very well tonight. But the second home run from Cavadas,
Nico Cavadas, the big bad man hitting DH for the Angels. Nico Cavadas.
That was a first pitch fastball. So he didn't have really an opportunity to set him up there. But the Moniak one was second or third.
That was a first pitch fastball. No, it was a first pitch fastball to Moniak too.
They were
so
both
that's the one thing
pitches?
I was going to say is not only is that his pitch, but the Angels, for once, they do their job. They scout before the game. And yes, they were on top of that fastball. Moniak hits it 437 on a first pitch fastball that wasn't in a terrible spot, down and in. Moniak, though, what he has done is he's shortened up his swing a little bit. He realizes that he has enough power, despite his frame maybe not being huge. When he's swinging the ball well, he doesn't need this big, long, loopy swing to hit a home run. He absolutely destroyed that baseball. So, no, I get what you're saying, Pete.
I had it backwards. You're right. First pitch for Moniak. Cavadas was on the 5th pitch. But again, both of them 4-seam fastballs. So, deep into the count, that was a 3-1 count. You cannot throw a fastball when your fastball is getting shelled over the plate 3-1. So it was just kind of bad pitching. And then they pulled the ripcord in the 6th inning and said, you know what, we can't win them all. Let's get some of the starters, the top 3 in the lineup. Let's get these guys rest. So they set them down and they just phoned it in and said, we're done. Congratulations. Good job. And that was that, so I feel like the Dodgers, they won that game yesterday kind of by a miracle. They struck out 16 times. They didn't deserve to win that game yesterday, but Mookie Betts had a good game. And then, Miggy Rojas had the clutch hit and in the top of the 10th inning rather, to score what would ultimately be the game winning run. And then the bullpen was just lights out for the Dodgers yesterday. So, they weren't hitting in this series. As I mentioned, probably makes sense coming off of that Arizona series. They were a little bit gassed. And then, they're off tomorrow. So they were definitely smelling the barn a little bit on this one. After the first inning down 5-0, they were just kind of like, well, that was fun. What's next? What are we doing tomorrow? Right. They just didn't care anymore. And I get into debates and discussions with our friend Jeff, host of the Locked On Dodgers podcast, about how much players care. And his argument to me is they always care. They always want to win. And I agree, but there are times when you're just not mentally in it, right? You're not nose to the grindstone, doing everything in your power to win the game. It's like in tennis, when you fall down 5-1 in the second set, you tank, not so much anymore, but back in the day, guys like Agassi would tank the set away just to get to the next set. Why waste energy on this set, which I'm clearly not going to win? Let's go to the next set and start over. And that's kind of what the Dodgers did. They tanked this game away after the first inning, really. And we're just like, yeah, you know what? We're done. Congratulations. Tip your cap and move on. And the Angels, they continued to pour it on. They took advantage of feeling good for once and hitting the ball. By the way, though, was it just me or was that Rendon single in the first inning just a really bad piece of hitting? He looked terrible. I was like, what? It was like this half-assed swing where he was just trying to put the ball in play. I'm like, I thought Rendon had a really nice long swing. That swing was, just Pete, make contact swing.
Pete, you just talked about debates about how much people care, how much players care. If there was one guy that even the biggest statistics analytics guy would say, this guy doesn't always look like he cares, it's Anthony Rendon. And so you're right. Even when he has I think his 12th and 13th RBIs of the whole year, this guy makes more money than anybody. Even then, like you said, the at-bat isn't amazing. The swing is, So it's very ironic that that's what you pointed out right after you talked about people caring or not. If there's one guy, it's Anthony Rendon. After the break, we'll get into my thoughts a little bit more on the Angels exploding. It's funny, again, you talk about that sort of debate. I am kind of usually more on the side of, I don't like to just say, oh, it's effort or it's momentum or one thing. I am kind of typically a little bit more stats and just execution and whatnot. But one thing I have religiously said on these postcasts, and all of my loyal postcasters know I say this, this Angels team is different. This is strictly a momentum team, or what I always say, it's vibes. It's all vibes with this team. You can tell in the first 3, 4, 5 at-bats whether this lineup is going to get mowed through by the starting pitcher or not. They're a very stubborn team, and maybe it's because they're young and the few veterans are hardly leaders in a guy like Anthony Rendon. This is a very stubborn lineup. And so when you're going against a guy like Bobby Miller, who he was pretty stubborn and he didn't change his things, at least early on, it works out really well because the Angels lineup is never going to change anything. Now, on the flip side, usually this team gets shut down the first couple of innings, and then we always see pitchers go 6, 7, 8 innings. There aren't really pitchers that have 4 good innings against the Angels and then start struggling. No, it's you can tell right away. They're either going to go the distance or they're not going to do well at all. And this was just one of those rare nights where the Angels came out right away in the first inning, clearly had their A stuff, and also clearly had the right approach against Bobby Miller, and they just kept it going. And Bobby Miller was the stubborn side in this one, and it works out for the Angels. But when we come back from this break, we'll talk a little bit more about the Angels' offensive explosion. I want to see, does Pete think this game means anything? I mean, he kind of said a little bit already that he was expecting a letdown in one of these games coming off that huge Diamondback series. But we'll talk about what it means for both teams. I'll tell you, I actually think this game means a lot for the Angels. We'll talk about that and more after our break here, once again on this special crossover edition of the Locked On Angels and Locked On Dodgers postcasts. Now, today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Back here live on the special crossover edition of the Locked On Angels and Locked On Dodgers postcast. He's Pete Fox. I'm Gavin Carlson. The Angels absolutely destroy the Dodgers tonight, 10-1 at the Big A. It wasn't about Shohei Ohtani tonight. It wasn't about the crowd tonight. It was about an Angels lineup that has struggled for most of this year. That's why they were 57-81 coming into this baseball game. But they didn't look it tonight. They looked like a team, and Pete was asking me before we went live, and he even asked me after we went live, where did this come from for the Angels? And here's my take. I already talked a little bit about how stubborn this lineup is and how when it's going poorly, it's going really poorly. But there was a couple really encouraging things that happened today, and I think sort of foreshadowing what this lineup will look like next year. We all know we are anticipating Mike Trout to come back, right? This guy, injuries have been everything for him, but you have to assume he's going to be on the field next year. If Trout's in the outfield, the question I've had is, who's it going to be on the left and right of Mike Trout? We know he wants to play center field. Is it going to be Taylor Ward and Mickey Moniak? Is it going to be Taylor Ward and Joe Adell? Is it going to be Mickey Moniak and Joe Adell? Is Luis Rengifo going to get thrown into the outfield? Well, tonight, Taylor Ward has another huge game. He really likes playing the Dodgers. I remember back when they did the Freeway Series at Dodger Stadium a couple months ago, he played really well. Obviously, he played well yesterday. He is unbelievable today. 3 for 4, 2 RBIs, 2 runs, a walk. The OPS is at 744. The average is getting closer to 250, which is where you need to be if you're supposed to be the veteran in this lineup. But not only Taylor Ward, Mickey Moniak, arguably been top 2 hottest hitters in this Angels lineup as of late. The big 3-run home run tonight. He only goes 1 for 3, but he has a 3-run homer. He also gets on base via the walk, and I know the average is only 231. I know the OPS is only 676, but what I want to see is a guy who looks like he is interested in fighting for a starting spot in this lineup next year. Will it be Rengifo playing second base? Will it be Michael Stefanik? Will it be Brandon Drury? We don't know. But right now, Mickey Moniak is saying, I deserve to be in this outfield. I've also been an above-average glove. And so maybe it's Taylor Ward, Mickey Moniak, and Mike Trout. Maybe Joe Adell sneaks in and we DH Taylor Ward. I don't know. But I'm starting to feel a little bit more encouraged about what this lineup can look like next year in terms of the outfield. The infield is set. We know Neto's playing short. We unfortunately know that Rendon is playing third. We know Shanuel is playing first. We know Hoppy is playing catcher. For me, the question in these last couple of weeks is who is going to claim that outfield spot between Mickey Moniak, Joe Adell, and Taylor Ward. And who knows, maybe it will be all three, and the fourth and Mike Trout will DH, or one of those three will. But that's what really made me excited. I'm not really too worried about Brandon Drury going 1 for 4. At this point, I've given up on him. I would like to see Logan O'Hoppe heat up a little bit because he's really struggled as of late. Nico Cavadas, whatever. I'm glad he hit a home run. But for me, it's seeing Taylor Ward and Mickey Moniak and the outfield starting to be competitive, knowing that there are spots up for grabs next year.
Well, the biggest question always for the Angels is pitching, though, starting pitching. I mean, that's the biggest question that hangs over their head year after year after year after year. So, those are all good points, but I look back at the Angels and I go, can they find anybody to kind of anchor this pitching staff and be a guy that's not a 500 pitcher? I can't even remember the last time they had a guy that went out there and besides Shohei Ohtani that dominated more often than not. And, since we're on the topic of starting pitching, I think when you come away from this game for the Dodgers, the majority of the people that paid attention to tonight's game are not worried about the offense being flat. It was the pitching. That Bobby Miller is a huge question mark. Victor brings it up right here. At this point, Dave Roberts should know that Bobby Miller, Kershaw, and Buehler will not get it back this year, and Roberts needs to find someone from the farm system. I keep saying bring back Landon Knack. Knack is good. I don't agree with all of that, but during the break, I just opened up Instagram, and on the Dodger Nation feed, the question was, what do you think about the performance of Bobby Miller tonight? And all of the comments are about Kershaw, Miller, and Buehler and whether or not they have what it takes to be productive in the postseason. And these are the problems and the issue right now that is hanging over the Dodgers' head. The bullpen, very good. I don't want to say they're great, but they're top 5 in the league. They're good. They're pretty much set on what they're going to do, notwithstanding any injuries, as long as the health maintains. What we're seeing now from the bullpen, aside from the guys that they have brought up in September, the call-ups, like couple of the guys that pitched tonight, Michael Peterson. Grove will be there. Peterson will not. And then what's the other guy that pitched the other night? Turtleneck dude. He's not going to be there either, more than likely. But the bullpen is set. They've got a bunch of good arms there, a bunch of talent, and a bunch of options. But as far as the starting pitching, there are a ton of questions for this Dodger team. What are we going to get from Glass now? Is Yamamoto going to be ready? Right. Fortunately, Jack Flaherty's been good. And I don't think he could be the number 1 starter going into the postseason. I don't think that Kershaw will get an opportunity. I feel like if Buehler kind of stays where he is right now, which is not great by any stretch, he's okay. His last outing yesterday was not great. Again, I gave it like a B+. But the outing before that was good action on the curveball. So maybe it's every other as we go down the stretch here. And by the time the postseason rolls around, he's ready again. So then you've got Glass now, Flaherty, Yamamoto, Gavin, Stone. Those are your guys, and everyone else is fighting for bullpen spots. So yeah, it's a big question right now hanging over the Dodgers' head as to who the starters are for the postseason.
Yeah, I can already foresee a scenario where Dave Roberts is not very confident in his starting rotation. Maybe he starts overthinking things in terms of bullpen arms, opening games in the playoffs. And I can already see Dodgers fans everywhere going, oh my goodness, Dave Roberts is overthinking things again in the postseason with pitching. But can you really blame him? Like you're saying, Pete, there's a lot of question marks in the rotation, and we'll see if things get solved in the next couple of weeks, or else Dave Roberts will maybe have to big brain things, as people like to say. Maybe he'll have to overcomplicate things with this pitching situation. As Nando here says, Dave Roberts doesn't think. Oh man, poor Dave Roberts. He's a Bruin, so I'm always going to defend him a little bit. But yeah, no, you're right. It's an interesting thing, and it's just kind of crazy to look at this Dodgers roster and see what the rotation was coming into the year. Seeing, Glasnow and Yamamoto and thinking, oh my goodness, there are no holes. But now, as Victor correctly points out, other than a few guys, there are a lot of question marks in this rotation for the Dodgers. When we come back, Pete, I'll talk a little bit about your question about the Angels pitching situation, because I don't want you to let this start fool you. Griffin Canning is still no good, okay? The ERA is still over 5. And the reason I didn't discuss Griffin Canning, while I am very happy for him that he was good tonight, the moral of the story is if the Angels are relying on Griffin Canning to be a meaningful starting pitcher next year, then that means we're not in a good situation. So we'll talk about it a little bit more after this last break here on this special crossover edition of the Locked On Angels and Locked On Dodgers postcast. We'll be right back.
All right, tonight's episode of the Locked On Dodgers postcast, the Locked On Angels crossover postcast, is brought to you by Game Time. I'm a big fan of the Game Time app. I have it on my phone whenever it comes to buying tickets time, whether it's for baseball, football, any sporting event or comedy or concerts. I go to Game Time first just to check it out because I know that they always have the lowest prices that are available there. And I'm not afraid of waiting to right up an hour before the game because you can save a lot of money by doing that, sometimes up to 60% of face value if you wait up until game time. They also have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite event even easier. Of course, views from the seat is another huge factor, another huge feature for me that I really love. They have curated deals that make it easy to find the best price on great seats. The super deals, seat views before you buy, lowest prices guaranteed, even event cancellation protection and job loss protection, etc. All in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Views from your seats and the lowest prices guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. Again, Locked On MLB, LOCKEDON MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Game Time today. What time is it? Well, it's game time. And tonight's show also brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest way and most exciting way to play DFS. Unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers. You don't have to compete against other people. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players and stat projections for that game and watch the winnings roll in. With the NFL season underway tomorrow, you're going to want to jump on one thing specifically. They have the season totals. So if you think that Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for more or fewer than 4,450 yards, you got to get that in by the start of the season, which is tomorrow. And if I'm correct, I believe the Chiefs play tomorrow. So get on that for a season total. All the season total bets or projections are very fun because they last all season. It's a good value. Here's another good value. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on every prize pick every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard out of Caleb Williams is an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because when it's gone, when September is over, it is gone. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play 5. That's Locked On MLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 bet. You don't even have to win that bet to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks.com. Run your game.
Back here live one more time on the Locked On Sports Los Angeles YouTube channel. This is the special crossover edition of the Locked On Angels and Locked On Dodgers postcast. Once again, he's Pete Fox for the Dodgers. I'm Gavin Carlson for the Angels. 10-1. Angels absolutely destroy the Dodgers. Man, how great does it feel to say that? Real quick, we'll talk about Griffin Canning a little bit. He does deserve his due. He goes 6 2/3 innings, just 4 hits. He does have 4 walks because Griffin Canning always has a walk in him, and it always amazes me. You expect the walks and the lack of control from guys who are throwing 98 and that they're throwing it all over the place. That is not Griffin Canning, all right? He throws a 93-mile-an-hour boring fastball, and yet this guy is wild like no one's business. But tonight, even with the 4 walks, 7 strikeouts out of nowhere and only 4 hits allowed. That's why he only gave up 1 run through 6 2/3 inning. Hunter Strickland, who Pete Fox opened the show saying, Hunter Strickland looked really good. Yeah, tonight, maybe not every night. Tonight he did look pretty darn good, though. Just gives up 1 hit, also has a strikeout. And then Miller, who is a young arm that we're hoping to see some stuff from. Ryan Miller, 28, so maybe not super young, but not much experience in the major leagues. He looked good as well.
We've also got that guy that throws 112 miles an hour. Why doesn't that guy pitch every night? Like, that guy's amazing.
Yeah. When you're 58 and 81, you don't need to waste the 112-mile-an-hour pitches every game, especially, hey, when you're up 10-1 and the Dodgers aren't even trying, why do we need to try, right? But at the end of the day, like I said before the break, Griffin Canning, I'm happy for him. I'm glad he had a good start. He needs it. He's actually had a couple good starts as of late, but it's still been an awful year. I love the Dave Roberts hate. I don't love it because I do like Dave Roberts, but I just think it's fun to see the Dodgers fans freak out and I do think, like you were saying before, the pitching situation is maybe a valid thing to freak out about, more so than, like you're saying, them only putting up 1 run against Griffin Canning. At the end of the day, for the Angels in the rotation, happy for Griffin Canning, but I don't want to see him in this rotation next year. Reed Detmers looked pretty good yesterday. I'd like him to be there. I would like to see Caden Dana in there. I'd like to see Al DeJerry in there, hopefully. Certainly, I love
youngsters, Gavin. The big story last year and the year before was that the Angels went all in on pitchers in the draft. That's it. We're just drafting pitchers. Yes. Are any of these guys showing up? Are any of them showing any promise?
Well, the problem is, I think the most encouraging young guy coming into this year, you can make the argument, it's Reed Detmers and Patrick Sandoval. Patrick Sandoval does not have a good start to the year, and then he gets hurt. He's done for all the year. He's probably done for most of, if not all of next year. Reed Detmers falls off a cliff so hard that yesterday was his first start in months. We had to send him down so he could figure out how to throw strikes. So both of them fell off. Now, the Angels, I think, and a lot of the postcasters know, I am so high on Jose Soriano. He was supposed to be a bullpen arm. We convert him into a starter. We stretch him out this year, and he's got the perfect pitch repertoire for a starting pitcher in 2024. He throws hard. He throws a good sinker. He forces ground balls. He's not going to strike out 11 guys an outing. He's not going to, even limit lineups to 2 or 3 hits. But if he has a walk, if he gives up a couple hits in an inning, he's going to throw that sinker down and in. He's going to force weak contact. He's going to force double plays, and he hasn't been stellar all year. But I think we've heard GM Perry Minasian talk about it even in the last week or so. He's like, Jose Soriano, we struck gold with that. And maybe that makes up for some of those other poor performances. I know that Minasian, I know you don't feel great about that. But yeah, what are your thoughts, actually? That happened recently. We decided to extend him because there was some uncertainty at the end of the year. Was he going to be under contract? He gets an extension. I know from the outside looking in, people are probably like, how in the world is anyone associated with the Angels getting an extension? So from your Dodgers island, what do you think of that decision a couple days ago,
I'm gonna use this as my jumping off point from Sean the Bomb. Do Angels fans hate Wash as much as we hate Dave?
Not at all.
I don't think we hate Dave, and Washington is brand new, so I think Angel fans are still trying to figure out what's going on, and he's kind of been dealt an S hand. So yes. He's, by all accounts, he's a likable guy and a good manager. So I would say no, but look, the reason I've just a little bit of history, right? Much like everyone thinks I hate Shohei Ohtani and all of that, and I blame this loss on him, etc. I don't, and I'm not a Shohei hater, but whatever. Like that's the cloth I have to wear, right? I grew up in Palm Springs, California, where the Angels did spring training, and when I was a kid, so I've been an Angel fan as long as I've been a Dodger fan. Since I was a little kid, I probably was an Angel fan first, right? Because I would go to the spring training games as a little kid, like a mile from my house. I played Little League baseball and Senior League baseball on that same field. So like I've always been very closely knit to the Angels. And my mother, who's a huge baseball fan and still alive at 97, not grew up, but knew all of those guys in 1961 when the Angels formed as an expansion franchise. So she's been a big Angel fan for her entire life. And I've always been tied to the Angels. But the fact that they've gone through this horrible Arte Moreno run, it's really soured me to the entire organization. And I blame it all on Arte Moreno. His hires as general manager, the fact that he's got all of his cronies in the front office, Dennis Kuhl and all of those guys that you would say don't know anything about baseball. But let's not forget, they've owned this team, or they've been in the front office under Arte Moreno's ownership for over 20 years. So they should know baseball at this point, but they don't. And that's got to be what drives Angel fans absolutely crazy. And I empathize and I get it, because when we heard last year that, he was going to sell the team and, Mark Cuban was going to come in and buy them and make them into a real baseball team, everyone was just so over the moon. And then all of a sudden, Arte Moreno's like, never mind, psych. Everyone's like, what? Wah, wah. I mean, it's just got to be infuriating. So I don't remember exactly what your question. Oh, Perry Minasian. Yeah. He's a nothing. He's one of those guys that worked under a good general manager in Atlanta. So they're like, oh, well, you must be good too. No, wrong. No, he's not. And the bottom line is Arte Moreno still makes too many decisions. And so Perry Minasian's just like hands are tied. But the one story that I remember hearing about Minasian when he first showed up was calling down to the dugout, like making decisions from wherever his office is down to the dugout saying, take that guy out, put this guy in, and I'm like, that I'm out on all of that. At least with Andrew Friedman, he makes it sort of, under the radar. There must be a book that Dave has that, tells him what to do and when. So it's not as obvious. There's not a phone ringing where, Andrew Friedman is telling Dave Roberts what to do. So yeah, it's all surprising. It's all has to be very, very frustrating for Angel fans, and hopefully someday it changes, but I don't know when. It doesn't seem to be on the horizon anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I think most Angels fans can agree on regarding Perry Minasian is, like you said, his hands are tied by Arte Moreno. And so at least the way I look at him, and I think most reasonable Angels fans agree that in terms of free agency, in terms of trades, exactly. That Sean, you're right on point. In terms of free agency and trades, there's been some head scratchers, but those are things that the ownership is going to, if not fully decide, at the very least influence. The one thing that ownership can't really influence is the young players, the young prospects. And the one thing we give Perry Minasian credit for is there is the beginnings of a young core being built with the Angels. We have Zach Neto. We have Logan O'Hoppe. We have a guy like Jose Soriano now. We have a bunch of young arms, like you're saying, Pete. We spent all these draft picks on them, but some of them are starting to show things. Caden Dana looked really good on Sunday, and Aldigeri, we had a great trade with Carlos Estevez. Like this trade deadline, I'm sure you didn't follow the Angels trade deadline too closely, Pete, but we were saying get rid of everybody, right? Obviously, this team's not playing for anything. Sell everything you can sell, and if you can't even sell them for half of what they're worth, sell them for a third of what they're worth, right? And we didn't do that. Instead, somehow this team only makes two trades. They trade Carlos Estevez, and they get a great return for him. And they trade Luis Garcia, and they get an unbelievable return for him. And you go, okay, Perry Minasian, he seems to know how to acquire young talent, and he's been able to have young guys like we're saying, the Netos, the Moniacs, even to some degree, the Shanuels, the O'Hoppes, that are showing some promise. And that's why you see Henry here saying, yeah, Perry isn't the issue. We already showed the Sean comment saying, I don't blame Perry. In terms of why didn't the Angels go get starting pitchers the last couple of years? Or why are they spending all their money on Anthony Rendon instead of a couple guys? Why didn't they do the right things at the deadline last year to keep Shohei, or even maybe do the unthinkable and trade Shohei? Those are things that ownership controls, and you can't blame Perry for. The things that Perry can control is what is he doing with the young talent, and that's where he's actually, for the most part, done a good job. And so that's why I think it might surprise you, Pete, but I think most people agreed that you got to give Perry like another year or two and see if things still don't make sense this offseason in terms of free agency, in terms of trades, then we just know that it's Arte Moreno's doing, and it's not Perry Minasian's doing. Now, if Arte does the unthinkable and says, hey, I'm going to take my hands off of things this offseason, and if Perry does a dumb job, then maybe the past free agency things were a little bit more on him than we thought. But for now, I think the benefit of the doubt goes to Perry, and all the blame goes to Mr. Arte Moreno. So, yeah,
I look back and I think one of the bigger problems that they've had over the recent past is firing Joe Maddon. They wanted Joe Maddon as their manager for so long. We heard all of these rumors that, we got to get Joe Maddon back into the organization and blah, 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 blah. Wins the World Series in Chicago. And then they figure out a way to get him as their manager. And then they go through a 12-game losing streak and you fire this guy. That was the dumbest move in a long time. In 12 games, that, and it was a longer streak of bad baseball, like 12 of 19 or something that was a little bit worse. But the losing streak was 12 games long, and then they were like, we lost 17 of 19 or something, which is awful. I get it. But you don't fire this guy that you have been clamoring for forever, who is a real baseball manager. Not that Ron Washington isn't. But the fact that they fired him and then brought in what's his name that had zero experience, and but he's a good guy. He's friendly. He's a player's manager, which means he likes to drink beer with them after the game. But that to me was a terrible move. And I think they're still trying to get out of that hole that, like, Joe Maddon would have figured it out. Now, figured it out to World Series status, I don't know. But he would have figured it out to make them a competitive team, right? And now, who's the guy that came in after Maddon?
Talk about Mr., as people like to call him, Numbnuts Nevin.
Yeah, Phil Nevin, the Croucher. You bring in Phil Nevin. Oh, he's a good guy. Everyone likes him. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. Who cares? You don't want. This is one of the big problems with Dave Roberts. He's too likable, right? One of my good buddies, who's a Giants fan, to be fair, and hates the Dodgers, but he's like, the problem with Dave Roberts and the Dodgers is that Dave Roberts at times is in awe of the Dodgers and the players, like legends like Clayton Kershaw. He doesn't have the huevos rancheros to say, you're not pitching today, or you're out of the game, or whatever. Like, he's too friendly. He's too nice, right? You don't want these guys to be friendly and nice. They're the manager. They have to make tough decisions, and consequently, you can't be buddy with everybody. And that's the problem with Phil Nevin. And Joe Maddon was, maybe an exception to that rule, because he was always buddies, but such a unique guy and such a unique style, and a style that worked. It worked in Tampa, it worked in Chicago, and it would have worked here if they'd have given the guy a little bit more rope, and they didn't. And I think they're still trying to dig out of that hole. Now, hopefully they give Ron Washington enough time, because he's also a very good manager. But who knows if you didn't win last year, you're out. We said we'd win in 2024 and we didn't. So you're fired too. You always have to, when you fire a manager or talk about it, you always have to ask yourself one very important question. If not this guy, then who? Right? And I don't think the Angels ever do that. They're like, you're fired. We'll worry about who's next later. It's an Oakland Raiders trait as well. We're just going to fire the guy and then not worry about who's next. Oh, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And that to me doesn't do you any good. You're just being emotional, and that's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and we'll leave it at this, but at the end of the day, there's never a clear direction. That's the issue, is that if you are going to go with Maddon, you need to have a full front office mindset, direction, style. Right. Yeah. That works with
top
it,
down,
right?
Top down.
And there was never that. There was never, the right combination. Nevin, I don't know what his direction was, to be honest, that's why Ron Washington made a little bit of sense to us. It was like, okay, this is a primarily young team. We need a guy who has proven that he can take a young guy and put his arm around his shoulder and help him develop. We've seen what he's done with infielders specifically. And we were thinking, okay, Zach Neto, one of our prized young guys. Hopefully Ron Washington can put his arm around Zach Neto and turn him into something special. And we've seen that to some degree with Zach Neto specifically, and with some of these young guys and everything. So I'm hoping that we're signaling that we actually understand the type of roster we have and the type of manager that is needed for that roster. Whereas in the past, there's never been a direction. It's been whatever Arte wants to do, and that's it. And it doesn't make sense, because he wants to get superstars in so he can sell tickets and so he can sell jerseys, but he doesn't want to invest in a good medical staff. He doesn't want to invest in enough scouts. He doesn't want to invest in, everything that makes an organization good. He just thinks you buy a couple guys with big names, you sell tickets, everyone's excited, everyone's happy, and there's never a true plan. There's never a true direction. And so we're hoping, even, people can debate Perry Minasian, but hey, if you stick with the guy and you stick with the manager and you give him a couple years, at least you are signaling that we actually have a direction we're going in. And if in 2 or 3 years the direction did not work out, then we'll cross that line, that path when it happens. Just for now, commit to something, have a direction, have things work hand in hand, and see what happens.
It's a full organizational rehab that is needed there in Anaheim.
Yeah.
And I want one final thing here, Gavin. I want to address Sean's comment. I think the era of managers being like Tommy, I'm assuming he's talking about Tommy Lasorda, can't get on guys and be super rude or have crazy profane outbursts. It's just a different era. And I agree with you. You are 100% right. And that's not what I'm suggesting. But a guy like Bruce Bochy walks that line. He makes tough calls. He makes the right calls. And he's not on them, yelling at them and screaming at them, but he's also not their buddy. He's friendly. He's nice. He's a good guy. Dusty Baker's another example. Great guy. Everyone loves Dusty, but he makes tough decisions and he doesn't get caught up in the minutia of, oh, I'm in awe of this guy, or I don't want to make anybody upset or whatever. There is a fine line there. And yeah, the era of Tommy Lasorda, that's gone. Yeah. The yelling and screaming and being grumpy and mad at everybody all the time. And, the outbursts. Yeah. I don't think that is ever going to come back again, but there is a fine line. And I don't think that Dave Roberts has that. I think he's a little too friendly and too nice. And I think Ron Washington does have it. So that's good for the Angels.
Yeah, I think he does. I think with Ron, there's been a couple times he said a couple things where maybe he's calling out guys for missing suicide squeezes. Why were you calling the suicide squeeze? That's something we were debating earlier in the year.
He's a
as
fan.
Angels
He
fans.
likes it. He's old school.
He loves him a suicide squeeze. But I agree. I think the decisions speak louder than the words, right? Why scream at a guy and just take him out of the lineup, right? Just that says more than screaming, right? Like you're saying, make a hard decision instead of just boasting about it. And that's what will, at the end of the day, is what matters the most. And so I totally agree. Yeah, the era of yelling at guys and cussing them out in front of people is never going to work in 2024. But just take a guy out of the lineup, discipline him without humiliating him, right? And I think that's the way to go in this era. I mean, I'm 22, so I'm looking at it. I don't have as much experience with the old eras of chewing guys out and all that stuff. I understand I'm young here. I did have someone in the chat today saying this guy on the right looks too young to even know a lot about baseball. Fair enough. You can think what you want, but at the end of the day,
I could be your granddad and it wouldn't even be weird, Gavin.
Oh man, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. You'll call me crazy, but this is the first time in my life I've actually felt pretty old. I just moved into a new apartment. That's why my loyal viewers are like, where's the Angels banner behind you? I literally moved into my first apartment that is just mine. No one else paying the rent, just me, not roommates, nothing. So this is like the oldest, obviously, I've ever felt in my life. And yet I understand that you have all forgotten more baseball than I probably know at my young age.
Cupboards are full of ramen and mac and cheese, right?
Exactly. I'm just now learning that, like, oh man, I got to pay for my own Wi-Fi bill and everything. Oh man, I'll turn the air conditioning off a little bit earlier tonight to save a couple dollars on the electric bill. Right. I'm learning all that stuff the hard way. But Sean says Pete being Gavin's granddad. Who saw that? That's hilarious. That's a great way to end this hilarious night.
We've gone way
great
too
night
long.
For me. 10-1. The final score. Angels destroy the Dodgers. It was a fun night. We kind of branched off into talking about a whole lot more.
Go celebrate.
Yes, exactly. Like he was saying at the beginning, there's Angels fans popping champagne. One of the wins of the year for us. And hopefully we can turn it into a little bit of a win streak. We're kind of on a pretty nice stretch. We won a couple over the weekend. We win one of these first two against the Dodgers. Hey, let's not get to 95 losses. Let's not do it. We were worried about 100. Maybe we won't even get to 95. That's the goal. But with all that being said, shout out to you, Pete. It's always fun with you. Shout out to everybody in here. It's a fun one. Dodgers get destroyed, and I'm happy to say it. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you back here for more Angels and Dodgers postcasts throughout the rest of the year. Take care, and as always, go Angels. Have a great rest of your Wednesday night, everybody.
See ya.